If you're currently renting and trying to buy a house, the math probably feels like a personal attack. You save up, you check the listings, and you quickly realize that the goalposts have moved further down the field while you were sleeping. This is what the market looked like just a few years ago. In 2021, a $400,000 house at a 3% interest rate resulted in a monthly principal and interest payment of $1,686. Compare that to the reality of 2026. For that exact same $400,000 house, a 6% rate pushes the monthly cost to $2,398. That is over $700 in additional interest every single month. This creates the lock-in trap. Current homeowners with those older 3% rates are staying put because moving would mean doubling their interest costs. Since they aren't selling, inventory stays low, and new buyers remain stuck on the sidelines. But there is a massive contradiction at the center of this. The Federal Reserve actually cut interest rates last year, yet mortgages are still sitting near their highest levels in decades. This persists because of a common misunderstanding. When the Federal Reserve cuts its benchmark rate, it doesn't automatically lower the cost of your 30-year mortgage. The Fed controls short-term money. The rates banks charge each other overnight. This affects credit cards and auto loans, but home loans operate on a much longer timeline. The real indicator you need to watch is the 10-year Treasury yield. This is the baseline that banks use to decide what they'll charge you for a 3-decade commitment. Think of the bond market as a risk scale. When the economy is predictable and investors have high confidence, they accept lower returns on their money. That stability keeps the 10-year yield low, which pulls mortgage rates down. But when the world looks unpredictable, investors demand a higher premium to take on that risk. They want a bigger return to protect themselves, and that demand drives interest rates up. Until the bond market feels confident in long-term economic stability, your local mortgage rate is going to stay high, regardless of what the Federal Reserve says. Right now, there are 2 specific geopolitical fears that are actively keeping bond investors on edge and forcing yields to stay elevated. First, the escalating conflict in the Middle East, specifically involving Iran, threatens to spike global energy prices. High oil costs trigger economic instability, making investors very nervous about the long-term outlook. Second, the market is bracing for the impact of the Trump administration's tariff policies. Bond investors worry these trade barriers will cause inflation to return, which would eat away at the value of their long-term investments. It's a chain reaction. Global instability creates inflation fears, making bond investors demand higher yields, which forces banks to charge more for home loans. This chart shows the result of that volatility. We moved from the 3% pandemic lows to a peak of nearly 8% in 2023, before settling into the jittery 6.23% we're seeing today. While local demand still sets the price of the house, the cost of the money is heavily influenced by these international markets and inflation fears. Even with all that data, there is absolutely no consensus on where rates will go next. If you look at the major institutional forecasts, Wall Street is completely divided. This scatter plot shows the spread. Fannie Mae expects rates at 5.7%. The National Association of Realtors predicts 6.0%. Meanwhile, Bankrate and the Mortgage Bankers Association project 6.1%. Morgan Stanley sees rates dipping toward 5.5% mid-year, then climbing back up throughout 2027. With no major institution projecting a return to pandemic-era lows, these higher rates represent the new baseline for the housing market for the foreseeable future. Waiting for rates to drop below 5% might actually be a dangerous strategy. Millions of other buyers are waiting for that exact same drop. If rates do fall significantly, that sudden flood of buyers will trigger massive bidding wars. The resulting spike in home prices could easily wipe out any savings you gained from a lower interest rate. This is why many experts suggest you marry the house and date the rate. If you find a home you like and can afford the 6% payment today, it's often better to buy now and refinance if rates eventually drop. So, given those forecasts, are you planning to jump in at 6%, or are you holding out for a bigger shift in the market? Let us know your plan in the comments.